Welcome, everybody, to another Sunday Trialogue. This time with less Jason and more Ricardo and Ethan. So, welcome, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing
Great.
well.
Good to be here and see you guys as always.
Good to see you, Ethan, and Headless.
I didn't get a chance to watch the other episode with Jason, but I heard it was a good one. He told me it was 2.5 hours and you just were flowing. So, that's great.
Yeah,
we
it,
touched
it,
on
it
cool stuff.
it's very hard to put Jason to speak, but we tried hard, and he did say one or two words. So
That's good. That's good. He's coming out of his shell. How are you doing, Ethan?
Good. Just a little bit of a computer glitch, but I managed to outsmart it. And yeah, staying busy and steady, trying to in the wild world. Headless, will you be so kind to tell us about your adventure last week?
You got it. That's what I'm bringing to the table today. So, the adventure out for the quest for ancient civilizations. It was in a little place called Phoenix, Arizona, which I didn't really realize until the time. But Phoenix, Arizona has 8 million people in it. 8 million people, right? And the entire city looks clean and professional. And it's basically one nonstop conference center after conference center. So if you're at one conference center and you don't like what's going on there, make friends at the next hotel over and you can join in with the OBGYNs or whatever they got going on. But basically, it's one nonstop conference after another. It's like an assembly line of conferences. So it's a great
Perfect
town.
time of year to go there for any reason, and I guess that's why they probably set it
I'm
up there.
telling you, I fell asleep in the sun, and then I get back to 4 feet of snow. That's quite a shock, but that's how things go. So when I got there early because I was faced with a dilemma, right? So either I could fly back from Oklahoma to Wisconsin and then fly to Arizona after that, or I could just fly directly over to Arizona. So I got there 2 days early. Well, actually, it was 3 days early because I didn't want my flight to get canceled leaving Wisconsin because of all the snow. So I just took a direct flight over there, said, I'm going to stay a couple nights in a hotel, go around, see the sights. So the first day I got out there and I went to I'm not sure the exact name of it, but it was the aquarium. It was the big aquarium for all of Phoenix. Yeah. And that place was amazing. They had this whole little strip mall area that they had like the UFO experience on the upper deck. And they had this dinosaur cafe below that. It was perfect for kids. They had this big old merry-go-round out there. Just a great little area. And the fish were phenomenal. They were great. In the basement of this place, they had this aquarium theater, right? So you'd be moving on this sort of like rotating lazy Susan thing, looking at all the different aquarium objects. And it's kind of sad. A lot of the fish there were being rehabilitated because they could never be back in the ocean. So you kind of got tickets to see a bunch of handicapped fish, which I'm sure that's an added benefit to a lot of people. But for some reason, all you got to see was a bunch of handicapped fish and handicapped turtles and handicapped sharks because they couldn't be released back into the environment, which is an odd thing when you're thinking about it, because you're trying to show off these exhibits to the world. And meanwhile, the exhibits are kind of retarded. So it's an interesting trade-off. But
it's a very, very strange presentation.
It makes sense, though. I mean, like, you're taking care of these animals. But
sure.
You're never going to see like a really robust kind of characterization of the animal, especially like all these sea turtles. They have what's called bubble butt, which is where they get a bubble underneath of their shells. And they can't operate to get the bubble out because it'll kill the animal. And so they're basically floating around like this with their back end, floating. And the rest of them is sort of like paddling in the water and they're kind of deformed. It's bizarre, but certainly certainly not something you would see all the time in the ocean because those animals will get.
But is that because we have the oceanary, or I'm translating literally in the World Fair area, that when they did it in '98, and they built this huge aquarium with a gigantic tank where they can have, like, let me translate it to feet. So uh, they have 30 feet, 40 feet fish inside the tank. So that it's a huge tank. But we don't see any damaged animals. So what I'm thinking is that particular place getting animals from other aquariums and treating them there? They have a biological, sorry, not biological, biology, marine biology setting in there. That's why they have
Well,
those damaged fish, or is it normal?
pretty much all of the aquariums in the U.S. go through the San Francisco Bay Aquarium, which is like the feeder organizations to all the rest of the aquariums in America, and they're mostly rehabilitatory facility, right? So they take damaged sea creatures and try to rehabilitate them, and if they can't release them back into the wild, they go to all of the aquariums around the country. So, so I mean, I'm not trying to be an ableist when it comes to fish, but you kind of want to see some well-formed fish, right? But a lot of these sharks, and like they had a bunch of tuna there, right? And the tuna had big old chunks taken out of them, presumably from the sharks that were in the same tank as them. But they didn't actually, the sharks didn't finish the job because they're fed all the time. So this was just for the sort of for fun.
Curiosity bite. Just
got to keep the sharks to themselves so that they're not biting chunks out of your tuna. But you know, I guess that's just the orderly side that they're not really thinking about because they're being, I guess, kind-hearted towards the fish or whatever. But it was a great time. I spent most of the day at the aquarium, just going all over the place, dragging my bag around, and whatever. But I was basically taking Ubers the whole time. What's that? What was that? Oh, never mind. So after that, I basically hung out until Friday when everybody started to show up. And so I went over to the hotel. It's this massive complex. Again, like it's a hotel specifically designed to have these conferences at it. It's called the Embassy Suites in Scottsdale, right? And the facility was all the way at the back. So you had to walk through these huge atrium courtrooms or courtyards with pools in them to get to the actual facility itself. So we were walking back and forth the entire time. Just, you got to go to the front desk. That's about 2 blocks that way. You got to go to the conference center. That's about 2 blocks that way. So constantly going up and down, but it was a good time. I had a lot of fun. The first speakers there, I believe that was Friday night to sort of, set the pace for the whole thing. I don't even remember what they were talking about because, as soon as everybody got there, it was on. You know what I mean? So we had In the Abyss was there. He was one of the guys that we featured on the Occult Rejects, talking about the pyramids, talking about Egyptian culture and how it relates to Irish culture and how there's a big crossover that nobody wants to talk about. And I would include in that sort of the Canaanite Phoenician angle because all of these ships that went from Egypt all the way up to Ireland, they were all contracted under these Canaanite Phoenician kings, Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos. So why are we talking about that? But, again, it's a very unexplored topic, and he was doing a lot of evangelical work. He was talking to everybody, getting them up to date on the Irish questions about, how they're related to Egypt and how maybe the secrets of the pyramid might be in Egypt, sort of encoded into their stories and into their mythology. And nobody really pays attention to that because they don't live there and they have no idea about that. It was amazing to me how little the main speakers and presenters actually stray from their specific research topics, right? So I could chop
That's
it up.
Yeah, but
that-
it just seems like something that it helps them promote their whatever they're promoting, I guess. But it also, to me, is just a pursuer of wisdom in general, not necessarily for promotion of self. I feel like that is a limitation, right?
Well, for instance,
Not to fault anyone.
right,
Necessarily.
on Saturday we had an Atlantis panel. And so at the panel, you've got all these people come up and ask the questions of all of these different speakers. And one of the people asking a question, I thought this was a really stupid question, right? I thought, they've all got to know this stuff. They asked the panel, where does the name Atlantis come from? And the entire panel was silent.
Oh,
I'm like, hold on, you guys don't know that it's Greek? Like, you've been talking about the Timaeus this whole time. You don't know that Atlantis is named after Atlas, also the founder of the name Atlantic Ocean. Like, these are basic things that you should know, but again, they're so focused on their own little niche
and
research.
they don't want to answer anything that's not like completely factual, and
none of it's factual.
Well, and that's what I mean. So they just kind of can't ponder the potential or their opinion or summations. I think it's interesting. Something I was just thinking of, actually, Headless and Ricardo, is about the naming of the Atlantis and the Pacific. It was actually a mistake. In other words, the Pacific should be the Atlas, and the Atlantic should be the passive. For these are the natures of these oceans more so, right? So the Pacific is more volatile. It's the ring of fire. It's actually more heavy water and more consistently powerful, damaging ocean. Whereas the Atlantic is actually more passive. So not only are the etymology of the individual names interesting, but the contrast between the names cannot be or should be looked at, right? Because they have the passive and the active, or Atlantic, if you will.
That's true. To rejoin that, how old are these names, and do they come from an era when these ideas were reversed and the Pacific was far more pacified than the Atlantic side?
That's a potential. That's certainly a good question. And I wonder too, the Mayans and the Americans language are so atl and atlatl, or all these language orientations that have that ATL in it are really prominent in the Americas.
Yeah. Well,
it's almost like they're saying Atlantis in every word.
Yeah, you still have it. You go to, because to me, Atlantis is much more a story of after the cataclysm, these people, the survivors, or either they were in cities that were linked to the main island, and so those were the survivors, and then cut off from the main city, they became literally indigents because there was nothing going on, because they control all the trade. No one knows where they are or whatever. So if you go to the people that speak a lot about the eye in the Sahara, the movement from there into the Atlas Mountains in Morocco, the people that live there are called the Atarasians, that are described by the old chronicles as people that have no dreams. And barely spoke, like highly traumatized people that were, they were the end point of the salt trade for this city in the East Sahara. I can't remember the name right now, but they were the controllers of the salt trade. Even the
Mali?
Romans. No, I can look for it, because it's
the
interesting.
Malian Empire had a lot of salt trade.
Garments. The garments, I remembered. So the garments controlled the salt trade, and the final point of the farthest point of the salt trade caravans were the Atharasians, that are the guys that move into the Atlas Mountains after this huge event. So there's a lot of names that connect they are around the Atlantic, right? It's funny because if you go to the Pacific, you don't find that many
That's true.
ATL names. Right? So I
Well,
don't know what's the connection, but
the language of the Aztecs was called Nahuatl, and the TL is sort of pronounced ta, right? So Atlanta kind of even has that at the end of the name, but the TL sort of sound that comes through Nahuatl is kind of like all of the things boiled down from the etymology of Atlantis. And so there's the theory that Atlantis wasn't maybe one place, but like a vast network.
yes, a network. Yeah, that's what I go for.
And so there was one presenter, I think he had done Ancient Aliens before, that was talking about chem, right? So Kham, chem, all of that stuff seems to be a South Asian version of the idea of Aryanism, right? So Aryanism means that there's this specific ruling class of Aryans above all the rest of them. So this Kham or chem, this is where we get the word Cambodia, right? All goes back to Egypt. So if you can imagine the Egyptian trade going all the way around South Asia into the, Indonesian islands and having all of these, massive ancient megalithic structures that we keep finding down there using all this volcanic material, that's sort of like the Kham or the Chem sort of side of the Aryan sort of network. So if you have these vast networks connected to ancient lands, that kind of makes sense to me. So you've got the Chem network on the south, and then on the north, you would have the Aryan network, and all of these different civilizations sort of have a similar root. And you can find that in their languages and in their hierarchical structures.
If you follow the origin words that were given, that is Sonsis of Sais, right? We said that to what's his name? The exiled guy, Solon the Elder. So Solon the Elder get from Sonsis of Sais. There is a city near Alexandria, another city, where he says that there is one of the sacred records on the temple, and they had records of 6 previous huge world transformations or huge cataclysms. So, and those cataclysms can be produced either by cataclysmos, there is destruction by water, or pyrosis, ekpyrosis, there is the destruction of the world by fire. So, on that alone, you see that the Egyptians were not there for all of them, but they still have the records for at least 6. And if you consider 6,000 or 12,000 years for each one of them, it's a huge amount of time to have records from.
Well, that's true, as well as the Hawara complex. Now, I've talked about the Hawara complex a lot. It's this massive underground facility right outside of the Hawara pyramid that Herodotus talks about in his works. And he says it's about 2 football fields wide under the ground, covered by these massive stones, kind of like the Cyclopean architecture. And we know it's there. We found all of the LiDAR scans, all of the ground penetrating radar, which proves it's there, but it's all flooded out and nobody's doing anything to sort of get into it. So one of the big speakers there was talking about how basically all of modern archaeology is just sealing up these ancient sites. They're not doing any more study on these sites. They're not doing any more excavation. They're just preserving them for tourists. And so they were talking about Göbekli Tepe. All they're doing is sealing it in there and letting tourists come and visit. They're not going to actually be doing any study. They're not going to be doing any research. So that's sort of
Was it discussed specifically how this is all very interesting? I wonder, I've heard about in relation to Göbekli Tepe that they're actually literally stopping any more digging and archaeological research. So they're literally just set it up for little business adventure. And are they, have they ceased study or?
They're very much in a slowdown phase. So they're releasing things sporadically over massive time scales. So they're not funding these projects. The projects are less important than building
A little bite at a time, and it'll keep people interested, but otherwise they're really not.
right.
Well, it's a problem for them. First of all, because we are told, and most people believe this, that the site was purposely buried. Okay, so if we are talking about Göbekli Tepe, just okay, I can indulge someone find somewhere a lot of loose material and buried the site with it, right? We don't know where the material came from, but they buried the site. The problem is Göbekli Tepe is what, 3% of the whole thing that is under the ground, because all of that valley is filled with those kind of structures. It's a
Right.
huge area. So what they would have to tell us if they go and dig all of them, oh, they decided to create a valley. They just buried all of this. They went somewhere to get all this loose material to bury all these sites, because it's an enormous area, right? And so they lose much of the arguments that they are using to discuss Göbekli Tepe if they keep digging and finding another and another and another and another, right? Because if you look at the geology of the site, if you go to aerial maps and you start looking, there is a lake on top of the mountain to the west of Göbekli Tepe. So there is a huge mountain, and on top of the mountain there is this lake, right? If you follow the overflow of that lake, you'll find geological signs of a lot of loose material being pushed from those mountains into the valley and bury the whole valley with it, right? In order to go to that, you'll have to find a way when it rained enough for that lake to overflow and probably create the lake itself, overflow and bury all this. And to that, you have to go to around 4000 BC, where the Burckle crater was created, right? Which is this huge event that most likely 90% sure that it created the Atarasis, that Noah, all those myths of floods of that area, because since it actually impacted the bottom of the Indian Ocean, right? It's a huge impacted the bottom of the Indian Ocean. It projected in the air an imaginable amount of water. Not to speak about the tsunamis, right? But and so the first 2 or 3 days, it rained boiling water. Then it started raining cold water, but it rained for at least 2 to 3 weeks torrentially, so without stop. Right. And what the waters didn't destroy on the tsunami, in the interior, like the Middle East and so on, the rain just flooded everything. Even the Tigris and the Euphrates were completely changed. That's how you explain all of a sudden we have this hysteria from Sumerians and then Babylons, and they were, because they started that after the water subsided and the rivers are completely changed. That's when they started those periods of agriculture and development. It's all connected
Excuse
to
me,
this
Ricardo,
event.
so it was raining, boiling salt
Boiling,
water.
boiling
Was it
water. Yeah.
was it effectively salt water too? Like,
Well, if you follow the process of sublimation or whatever it is that it's
probably
called,
not.
the transition, I think salt is lost in the process,
Uh-huh.
or in the evaporation and then the raining.
Yeah.
But I think boiling water is enough. So,
Right. No, just
If
right.
you're,
That's
if you're thinking about like a comet impact or something, I think that would be more likely if you're talking about boiling seawater, right? So the comet impact, and
they
then
would.
all
It's
this
it's
stuff sort of
it's
it makes
seawater. The
sense.
problem, but
It's a nightmarish, sensible process. Sorry.
the thing is, when the heat uh, creates this type of event. Oh, look at him! It's Shaman there. Hi, Shaman. So when the heat creates this, the water goes into a gas state, right? And then it condenses and comes down as rain, right? So I don't know if the salt is lost during this transition process.
It's
Like
so catastrophic, impossible to say.
I
But
don't know. What I can
It's
tell you is there are
still boiling,
chevrons.
but it might still have salt in it.
It was such a powerful event that there are. So this is about 300 to 600 kilometers from Madagascar to the east, where the crater is, and it's a huge distance to Australia. And northwestern coast of the Australia, there are about 200 miles inland. There are these huge chevrons with 300 feet high that were caused by the waves of the Indian Ocean going into Australia. In India,
Wow.
you have tales of temples that, because they were in narrow valleys from the ocean, but they were about 60 miles from the coast and 1,000 feet high. The waters got to the lowest step of the temple. They still have records in this place. So to me, it is not a single impact thing, because we see at the same time. I think this is the same comet, exact same comet that created the Younger Dryas. So imagine a huge comet coming close to the sun. The sun reacts to it. The comet fragments in huge pieces. The gigantic pieces are the ones to lose first. Some of them create the Younger Dryas. Then you have another event. So this is 12.6. Then you have another event around 9.6 thousand years. And then you have another one on the 6,000. That is the one that I'm talking about, 4,000 BC. And you see the craters on this one they are two in the Pacific, one in the Indic, and the one that I think it's not discussed, but I think it's the only way to justify the huge floodplains in Portugal, because we had no ice. So
So
without
you're
the ice,
saying
where did
in
the
this,
water come from, right?
in this
So
event there was more than one impact in a small period of time?
yes, and in a lot of impacts. So
Something I'm just learning about is that with the Three Eye Atlas comet or whatever,
hmm,
is that when it's coming through, it's interacting with the bodies of the solar system, sun, and otherwise, and causing it. There's a theory anyway that it might have caused a recent solar event to not start, but be more active and more
They
powerful.
showed a video of it.
Right,
So
and also some of the earthquake activity on the planet, it may be impacting, not necessarily causing, but providing
yeah, look,
precipitation for the
the,
events.
the thing is, people are very much divided because everyone wants to have a specific theory about it. So you have the people that say, like Robert Schoch, it was the sun, right? A huge eruption that glanced the earth and was put
It's
the air
everything on
into
one.
fire, put the air into fire and melted the ice. Others will say, no, it's the impact theory. It was a huge comet coming down in multiple pieces and created all this. I personally believe that we have seen it. We have seen these comets going to the sun and other objects, and the sun actually goes to them, right? It reacts. It actually has eruptions
Yeah,
towards these
yeah,
objects,
right.
right? And when that happens, they are completely broken down into pieces. In fact, just 3 or 4 months before Triatlas, we had another comet going by that wasn't spoken about, and the sun did that. It just broke it into pieces, right? And then there is people
Just
mistaking
electricity reacting to it with it, and
as
boom,
like a
gone.
solar flare, like gravitational waves through space. They actually interact, right?
Right. The gravity, the nuclear activity, the
If
electricity is just so profound that it's just things are
if you,
happening.
if you have an object going through space that has water and other elements in it, and it starts erupting because the temperature of getting closer to the sun, there is, I don't know if there is this electricity connection, some kind of a connection between the object and the sun, and the sun comes actually to it. It
Yeah, so
sends
many.
sends it like a shot direct to it, and
Yeah,
breaks these objects, right?
that
So
makes
it's,
sense.
to me
Yeah.
it's much, if we have proof that there was a huge comet related to the Younger Dryas, if we have marks in the floor that scientists can still detect of a huge amount of solar energy, right? You just put these things together, right? And then come the people, oh, it was nothing of that. It was volcanology. Of course, because every time there is an impact, if it is big enough, volcanoes will erupt. There will be earthquakes. There'll be volcanoes. There'll be massive amounts of land movement, of crust movement. So I think these people want to follow one strict idea, but I think they are all connected. It's very difficult to separate them.
Right.
So,
Well,
it seems that
especially
way.
with the video of Three Eye Atlas crossing in front of the sun, there's a huge solar flare as soon as it gets to that point.
exactly.
And there's no explanation for why this comet that has passed so close to the sun hasn't broken up. And it almost seems to be completely impervious to the massive amount of energy being put off by the sun. And in fact, was able to slow itself down as it approached. So as it's approaching the sun, it doesn't accelerate as you would expect as it's getting closer and closer to the gravitational field. It slows down. So these anomalies, when it comes to Three Eye Atlas, has made a lot of people sort of very suspicious of it.
There was two other new anomalies in the recent day or two. One that the object seemed to pertain to a radioactivity burst that was the largest they ever experienced. Is it an X flare, or I forget the exact term? Sorry, I just had it on the tip of my tongue. But it was the largest and most lengthy at the same time occurrence of this. Usually they would measure these occurrences at a second or two, but this went on for hours, and in a pulsing orientation that seemed to have some sort of pattern with its timing. The other thing that just happened, there is a satellite called MAVEN. Something, this stands for like Mars Atmos something or other satellite, that they had take pictures of it or record it with information scanning that it has, and it's never gone down before. Soon after, it just went down. This satellite MAVEN.
Well, you have to see in relation to what Headless was saying. If a comet is not mostly ice, it will not break up because the stone can take the impact of the sun. So what happens with Oumuamua and what happens with Trialoge? So Oumuamua is two eye atlas or one eye atlas, and this one is three, because they call it, for people that don't know why they are called eye, is because because they are extra solar system
Interstellar.
objects. So we don't know where they're coming from. They're coming from other parts of the galaxy. They are not part of our solar system.
But what if this is part of a bigger operation? So we all know of the Prime Directive, which is where these alien life forms are prohibited from interacting with pre-warp civilizations, right? And so if they're pre-warp civilizations, they don't get any sort of attention from the outside sort of galactic community. But as soon as they find out about that stuff, now I would see that as completely unenforceable in a Star Trek universe. But what if the idea is to farm life forms using geologic timescales and energy production in the form of these different, celestial bodies that are passing into and out of all these different solar systems as a method of creating the type of life forms that you would like to see enter into a galactic community one day?
It's pure panspermia, because in the case of the Three Eye Atlas, although it changed slightly direction and its speeds also changed, they are still within the parameters
Yes.
that astronomers and astrophysics can justify by this or that characteristic of where they are passing through. In the case of Oumuamua, they have no idea, because the difference in speed and in direction from an object that has no coma, it's just a stone. There's no coma. It didn't react to the sun. I'm just going through. Oh, this is cute. It had no reaction, but it changed direction significantly with no justification that astronomers can find, and it changes speed significantly without anything that astrophysics or astronomers can explain. In this case of the Tri Atlas, they can provide an explanation. It's not 100% satisfactory, but they can justify it by numbers. In the case of Oumuamua, they can't. Right, and considering what you're saying, Atlas, I totally agree. I think that these objects, in fact, if one day I finish my novel, if I ever finish it, I call these objects the life spreading probes, because if they happen to impact a planet or a moon, they have all the properties enough to generate life, like that initial soup that that our scientists said that were on Earth, and then by lightning created the first molecules, and then it started aggregating and more complex and more complex until the first forms of what can be called life emerge. But it's exactly as the Big Bang. It give us a miracle, and we'll explain the rest, because
Right.
it's
Well,
still.
unfortunately, who would have the long enough time scales to actually influence these things in a meaningful way? And that's the sort of unsettling part, is that now you're talking about maybe like a superorganism, right? Like an AI superorganism that's doing the transpermia so that we can be the host for its eventual hatching, which is more AI life forms that sort of conglomerate all of the views and thoughts of all of these different, water-based computers into now the silicon-based computers that then can leave the planet and join that galactic collective of AI.
Or were they
Right.
sent civilizations that no longer exist? Right? Because how many probes have we sent, like Voyager missions, right?
Right.
So the Voyager will continue to travel long after the Earth is no more, because there's nothing to destroy it out there, unless he bumps into something or goes into a star.
Well, that brings up Oumuamua again, because for Oumuamua not to have a coma, it means that the surface of it has to have zero static electric charge. So as it's traveling through the universe and it's collecting all of the dust particles that now are
Completely insulated, yeah.
Right. It has to have some sort of electrical insulation, because all of that stuff would start to burn up as soon as it gets closer to a sun, creating that coma effect. But if there's no coma,
Nothing.
that means it probably has a negative charge or some sort of charge on the surface that keeps away the static electricity. That
I heard somewhere that in theory it would be possible to catch a Oumuamua, but still, if we still were to do it technologically, but 3I Atlas is moving so fast, there's no way to even catch it.
But the thing is, the coma itself of 3I Atlas is millions and millions. I think it's 12 million kilometers, something like that. The thing that is projecting in the front that it shouldn't. In the opposite direction that it should be, considering the sun influence, it's also enormous. So when we think about millions and millions and millions of kilometers, like, where is that material all coming from? How is that small thing? That small thing creates millions and millions of kilometers
the coma
of debris?
changes direction. So sometimes it's on the front of this 3I Atlas, and sometimes it's on the side. Sometimes it almost looks like the coma is actually sort of like a propulsion thing, because when it started to slow down, the coma was in front, which doesn't make any sense.
It still has it in front. It still has it.
Right.
Yeah, but if it is a sort of propulsion,
solid jets too, or multiple really sturdy jets, they say.
People are talking about ion propulsion and things like that, but all of that requires fuel. So I don't buy it, because if it is a form of propulsion, then where is the tank for that?
It could be
nuclear. Do you really think an advanced civilization would use nuclear? Because that's retarded way of creating energy. That's like
I think it's the elements of using it in interspace might be the only place where a smart life form would use it, because it's so steady. You can count on it. Put it in a rock, But
But
you're right. It
it's
seems primitive, but
it is inefficient. Fission is extremely efficient. It's
that's
what we've
that's
been
what I need to say. That it's. I'm not saying that it's a steam powered reactor. I'm saying that there's maybe some elements at play that that
because
are fueling it.
that leads us to that famous question that I keep asking: is are we advanced?
Right.
Uh, because I'm going to say it again. We use controlled. We put people on top of cylinders filled with explosive liquid, and then we control the explosion to take them into space. So it's no different from the first
And worse,
fireworks of the Chinese 4,000
right.
years ago. It's the
And
same
worse than
principle.
that, I heard a reputable scientist point out that we are very lucky to be on this size of a planet, because if we were on another size planet with another like more extreme gravity force, we would require such big rockets that it in fact would not be possible to go to space. And my thought is, do you not see how dumb you are? There's not one way to do a thing.
Right.
There's
We
not
are
one way to manipulate travel. We are so human in thinking mine, refine, and burn that the scientists can't even go, oh, we could never do it on another planet.
we are not using, we are not working with the elements or nature itself.
Right.
We
Sure.
are finding ways to fight it and win that fight, right? Which is the complete wrong way of thinking. It's just like the easy escape. Oh, I know that if I give it enough power, it will be able to beat gravity. Yeah. So
Water wizard. He's talking about, so in this book, Victor Schauberger is talking about using the geometry of water to our mechanical advantage, which was so revolutionary at the time, everybody considered him to be a madman. Using the pre-existing geometry of water to our mechanical advantage seemed crazy to these people. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Like, you use the pre-existing structure to help make things better? That's crazy talk. But that shows you exactly what you're talking about. Instead of fighting against nature, you can, harmonize with nature and create something better out of the process.
sure, or even reflect it. If you find a way to reflect gravity, we would be able to do exactly the same thing. Right? And what they are doing is pushing through. That's what we're doing. It's creating these massive bombs with people on top of it, and let's hope they reach space before it blows up. So it doesn't sound advanced to me at all. But
Victor talks about the two forms of propulsion, or the two forms of energy production, right? That would be explosive versus implosive. And everybody has a hard time picturing what implosive energy even looks like. All they have to do is think about their bathtub, right? The implosive force is that tornado that forms as you're draining the bathtub. That's multiple directions of force, all moving in the same direction, that you can then harness to create energy out of that geometric figure. So it's already there. It's pre-existing. It's according to gravity, but you're just using the controlled fall. It's like how we walk. We're not actually walking. We're controlled falling, right? We're not actually fighting against the ground underneath of us. We're cooperating with it and sort of moving with it. So I think there is a shift in consciousness when it comes to this stuff. And I think Victor was a big part of that. But once you can start to use the pre-existing geometric forces of the universe to your favor, then we're going to start to see a lot less of this fighting against nature and a lot more harmonizing with it.
I think one of the key factors to that, and though it might seem extremely simple, and I don't know if most people know this, I still find people that are surprised and have to test it for themselves, is above the equator, that flux of water that creates that tornado-like shape rotates in one direction. On the southern hemisphere, it rotates on the opposite direction. So the thing that you see in your sink it happens in different directions according to if you are in the north of the planet or the south of the planet, right? And I think in there is some
What
key.
happens, what happens on the line itself, though?
It just goes in
It
the
goes straight
equator.
down.
It just goes.
No, there's never been a single hurricane or tsunami or typhoon or whatever they call it that has crossed the equator.
It can't.
Never happened in all of history,
It can't.
right? Because of the spin, because of the geometry.
It just the air just goes down. It ended. It has no kinetic energy. It cannot sustain itself because it's there and it directly falls down. So, but what the funny thing is, if you go and look to this phenomenon in scientific papers, you will see there is not one scientist that says that this is a scientific fact. They say that, well, sometimes it rotates in one way, but you can control it to move in another way. Yeah, if you force it to move in another way, it will move in the opposite way, right? But if you link things to work by themselves, they will rotate in one direction on the north and in the other direction on the south. But it's still not considered a scientific fact because they say it's not a certainty because you can change it. So
Well, that's one thing that the scientific establishment really agrees with flat earthers on, because flat earthers can't take this sort of spin idea in effect when it comes to the equator, because that doesn't fit their models at all. So they're in full agreement with the establishment that, well, actually, it's more influenceable than people think. But it's like, look at the native natural geometry of the thing instead of trying to fight against it. But all of the massive storms that happen below the equator spin in one direction, all of the storms on the top spin in another. If you think about it this way, how many times have you been working on a car or tightening a bolt, right? As you're tightening it from one side, if you look at it from the other side, it's turning in the opposite direction. Oh, Jason's here. I knew we were going to pop in. Jason, how's it going, buddy?
What's up, dude?
Nice. Good day.
I don't want to interrupt, but I've been watching now, and you sent me the invite, so carry on.
oh Jesus, you're now accepting everybody. Jesus.
Well, this asshole out here proved to be do we want to be nice, Headless? Do we want to talk the way we talked at camp this past weekend?
Well, I think it was important to bring you on. You were one of the main voices there. Like, I didn't know what I was expecting, but there you are, like coordinating all this stuff up at the front of the stage. And I'm like, how is he so integral to this whole thing? It's just like, I put myself in the situation. People give me jobs and I do them. It was really good.
Look, I've got let me turn off your YouTube show here because I've got us now in my background, and let me turn my volume up. Yeah, so I've got stage experience background, right? I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I studied stage acting. I then left New York to try to go live life, and I went to a local college here and went on acting scholarship. So, I've got that. I was a director, I was an actor. And so I'm just used to sort of being in that environment. And look, when you see things that need to happen, somebody needs to get a mic somewhere, right? Somebody spilt the fucking beer and they need a towel, and you're there on the front row. It's just your instinct, you're just going. And then, yeah, before you know it, they're like, all right, hey, do that, but it's being of service, man. Like you say, you're somewhere and you see all these people trying to do something, and I was there at the fucking goodwill of Mike and Dave's multiverse. They sent me a ticket. Probably, yeah. I wasn't the only one. So I was just out of pocket my airfare, and Dave let me split his room with him, So yeah, I felt like that's a normal thing, dude. Somebody's got you there and they've got obligations. Like Mike and Dave were, hosting up there with Gary and doing stuff. So you hang loose, you take your notes, you enjoy the speeches, and when you see something that needs to be done, you're just like, hey, got you, community.
Absolutely.
I'll stop
Big
there,
shout out to Mike and Dave. We're going on tonight, I think around 6, but we're going to be doing a big recap with them as well. But it was an amazing time. I got to meet a lot of people in the space and start to, figure out exactly what's going on the professional side of all of this. And well, the next quest for ancient civilizations is going to be in Sedona, which if you guys have never seen Sedona, you should check it out because this place looks freaking amazing. right? Phoenix was
It's one of
beautiful.
my favorite places. It's everything is a chapel there. Pardon the interruption of this.
Absolutely. So I'm really considering going to the next Quest for Ancient Civilizations because this is going to be phenomenal. And
Yeah, I think
all
so
my
too.
friends and everything sounds
You know,
really
talk about the spinning, the centrifugal and centripetal forces of the world. When you go to Sedona, one of the elements that it's famous for and draws people to is the vortexes, and each you can theorize, or anyway, that each kind of mound there is got its own vortex, and you can actually physically see it via the plants there. It does occasionally get snow there, but it's really not an extreme stormy environment. It's kind of in a valley below the rest of the area in a way. So the storms are not causing these plants to spiral. I think it's definitely something else. Is my point to bring that up. So you'll find all these trees that are really have grown under these vortex energy places that are just
And are they twisted?
they're twisted and mangled and mostly straight, but yeah, they're all like twisted, like energy is around a pillar, maybe. I don't know, you could look at it like that, but they're definitely influenced by something going on, not necessarily a storm.
Yeah, now I'm curious. I'm trying to open my Google Earth. I don't know if it's going to work because we are doing the live. But if it opens, I'm curious to see what kind of lines there are there in Sedona. If there are any main
I bet that they all line up there. The oddities in the area, Arizona, is just, the paranormal oddities is legendary. But also there's literally a mountain just outside of Sedona called Secret Mountain that is restricted and so forth. And there's all kinds of rumors that are hardly unfounded about there being underground bases, and at least there. So but the place is so magical and beautiful that it's worth a visit just for that.
Yeah, I think Sedona has a different history, but also very rich, like Roswell, but in different terms, but also very connected to strange things and strange beings and underground structures, and I think there are documentaries about underground bases, military underground bases with supposed aliens on that area too. So.
Yep, all kinds of rumors, but definitely Secret Mountain is like the whole area is so interconnected with LA, its history, and even Disney. All these rich people would commute to Sedona because it's in the desert, but it's like an oasis because there's the river in it, and it's very green and in the air, just in that little area anyway. It's very, very magical, but it's like also a Disney spiritual town, like the Secret Mountain. Oh, what's that? Well, that's the underground military base that they made around Walt Disney time, and they literally were, what do we call it? Well, let's just call it Secret Mountain.
Secret Mountain.
Well,
Nobody will figure it out, guys.
If
Gnomes out front, and it's just it's a small secret after all.
And there are all these areas in the immediate zone of Sedona that are federally restricted areas, and they'll be like really small and weird, and so like there's all kinds of rumors of very aggressive feds keeping people out.
Well, pretty much the entire Southwest is like that, but that's not uncommon for the high desert. High deserts around the world have various forms of strange entities and strange anomalies associated with them. The high deserts of Israel is where we get the Christianity and Judaism. All that stuff comes through the high desert, right? So high desert and cult activity are, linked all the way back to the beginning of civilization, just all the way back. And what came up a lot during this conference was the idea of the Hopi prophecies. And, they were talking about how 3-Eye Atlas might be this blue-red Kachina thing. That was a Billy, what's his last name? I forgot his last name.
Carson.
Billy Carson thing. He was up there giving a speech about it. And I think, it's hard to really put it into that facility. Like the whole 3-Eye Atlas thing is this blue and red Kachina, but I don't know, maybe.
The interesting thing about the Hopi prophecies that they are all set up in a very dualistic setup. In other words, like one of them is, if you'll meet the people with a turtle shell, and they people assume that's talking about the Spanish in metal shielding, what it's armor. And if they offer you their hand, then there will be peace. If they offer you anything else, then there will not be such good things. The story goes, the Hopi see these guys in the desert, they offer their hand to shake hands, and they are given some beads, and the Hopi go, oh no. I thought it was interesting too with the Hope of Prophecy, the blue star Kachina. They called the 3-Eye Atlas more blue than the sun, and I never heard anyone call the sun blue before. I've never seen it as blue. I don't know what they're talking about. Maybe Ricardo, you know what they're referring.
No, because
I thought that was
never heard about blue and the sun.
If you think about the atmosphere sort of filters out the blue light coming through the sun, so we see it as yellow, and the rest of the sky is blue. So there's this filtering effect that takes place. But it's funny, as I was
the way the water was flowing when you zoom back in, Ricardo. Keep going, but it looks like those electrical or plasma discharges.
Well, my telluric energy lines here are not as complete as in other places. But the first thing that I noticed that can create all those vortex is, can you see, crater zone?
Yeah.
So there was a huge impact in here. That
meteor crater, yeah,
that's
in Arizona too.
Yeah, and there's general
sunset. There is more than one sunset crater zone, and you see all of these circles in here. Like it fell, and then smaller pieces fell on the same
all those
place.
Flows. It's very strange geology. That's what I noticed when I was flying home. This is my first time flying over this part of the country, really in total, because I had to go to LAX, and I saw LA, which was surprising. It's this tiny little dirty little inlet. I don't know, it was just weird. But I'm studying flying the whole way back, guys, just looking down, out the window, studying this geology, and it just looks weird. Okay, if you're already open to the catastrophism as presented by Randall Carlson and others, right, and you're already open to the things that happened here, large flows of water, who knows, discharges from the sun, just all kinds of shit you can say was going on. When you're flying over this stuff and you're trying to just look at it, and you're trying to look at, okay, geologically, what put this here? Look, what I kept coming up against looking down as I flew, even getting over towards Texas, was, dude, you can see a certain mountain ridges, right? And you can go, okay, geologic forces, I understand those. I see some plates, right? I see how that formed. But then you go through vast swaths where it looks like it looks like looking at a LiDAR of like a mound complex. Do you know what I mean? It's just all these hills that make no sense. You can't see how one strategic or uniform force caused this landscape that makes up much of the desert Southwest. And even if you look at these canyons and you go, okay, let me discharge some electricity on some wood. Oh, it looks like that. Does water flow like that? I don't know. It's just very strange in general landscape.
I think what you're talking about is the geologic propensity for selection bias. Right? So what they're going to do is they're going to take these things that they can explain and then prop those up as being like, look, here's the stratigraphic forces that made it. But they're going to ignore the stuff that they really can't explain too well and just sort of let that pass under the rug, when that's the stuff they should be studying
Right.
and probably not focusing on the stuff that they can't explain so much.
Yeah, I think you're right. You just look at all those little pimples of earth everywhere, and you're like, that's 300 foot. That's like a fucking mountain to whoever's near it, but it's by itself. And so you look way over there. You know what I mean? Just in general,
Oh,
dude. As a non-professional, yeah, you start to go, I get the general geologic, workings of the earth, but my eyes just meet with things that don't answer easily with those narratives.
Like the Tuscaloosa alchemical process that seems to be passed over. These aren't geologic formations. These had to be influenced by man in some way. And you're talking about layers of metal within this rock. And, I do think it is alchemical in nature. Looking back at your photos, it's like, how could it not be? They were using forces we don't fully understand.
I think so. I think that's definitively how they got to whatever the technology was that we see the remnants of, right? And I use the word technology, in the same way rocks are technology, guys. I mean, I've got hundreds of years of rock technology, right here behind me, right? So we're not talking anything crazy, but it definitely involved metal, and it definitely involved somehow producing large bits of stone, okay? Because when you get in on this stuff, it's fucking concrete, Call me what you want, but the videos are there. Every stone is full of these little pebbles, man. And it's not sedimentary. However the thing lays, you can follow horizontal lines. Yeah, it's wild, right? So that's what I mean by technology. You don't find the machines. If I today wanted to go produce a large concrete thing the size of a fucking pyramid, right? Today I'd have trucks, I'd have tractors. You see where I'm going? I'd have all this other assemblage technology that if somebody came along down the road after a catastrophe, they'd see all this shit too, in some way. So is that some of the metal? There's just no way to know precisely. That's why the research is ongoing. But what we definitely have found, especially with these circular metal deposits, are things that our geologic narrative doesn't answer, right?
Right.
Now, because of the context of the completion of my work, and that triangular pyramid that is this stacked rubble, right? Pieces with drill holes, okay? That I know people were here. They came back through and stacked this stuff up that today, people asked me at first, they said, was that construction, were they blowing up stone in the area and then going to the trouble to pile it in a triangle that matched the bend of the river? Sure, that's what construction companies do. Second of all, dude, I used to work for Caterpillar many, many years ago. Okay, I would have needed their largest truck that they only use in like mines in fucking Colombia. Okay, if I wanted to tackle moving some of these stones that made up this pyramid, this mound, right? So somebody was here and somebody did that, and it was not the natives. It wasn't the mound building culture. So that was my entree, to it. I knew I had the hands of man somehow, some force that was not natural. And then I went on up, as you alluded to North Alabama and to Mentone and to Lookout Mountain. And I started finding the metal and the rock anomalies, the pieces of stone that evidently could not have been caused by erosive forces such as wind and water, right? I document that just on and on. So yeah, in total, I say technology is, guess how I'll wrap this up. They were doing something, dude, with things that we today probably would struggle to do. I don't know what to call that other than technology, even though it's remnants now, appear natural elements almost until you get in on them, right? And so
it would make sense that they're. I don't mean to cut you off, but it makes sense.
No, please. You're not cutting me off.
They're how they've made this happen. The facility or the faculty of the fabrication, however you want to think about it, it would make sense that we can't detect it and don't know where it is because that's how they lived. Everything was in unity with nature to where we wouldn't see the tools, we would see the outcome. Whereas today we're left over with the remnants and the pollution and the trucks and the this and that if we were to pursue such.
Yeah, but it isn't such an old thing. For instance, most people don't, and I even just found out this like last year. Or if you go, for instance, to the Strait of Gibraltar, you find these huge hills just by the ocean, right? What most people don't know is both in the Spain side and in Morocco's side, these hills are completely hollowed by man, and we did that supposedly, right, from the 15th century on. We hollow these mountains to create defensive structures, right? And we are not supposed to know where did they get the technology to do that. But if people go online and look for the hollowed mountains in Gibraltar and on the Morocco side, it's amazing what they did. How the hell did they took all of this stone? It's just a mountain that they just hollowed out to create windows, structures, rooms, places to put the canyons, storage, sleeping areas. They created all of this on when a time when we weren't supposed to have the technology to do it. So who knows what people could have done thousands and thousands of years ago? We have no idea. Uh,
The same
Just
as Darren Kuyu,
another
right?
thought.
When you look at underground Darren Kuyu, go ahead, Headless. You see a technology and an understanding of basic air shafts and how air flows that didn't pop out of fucking nowhere. Go ahead, Headless.
To go back to the DeSoto fire, from the evidence I've seen that you've shown, it looks like there was way more energy expended in that DeSoto fire than just a simple fort that they lit.
Yes. So you're calling it here. Let's clarify here. Okay, because it is confusing, right? So you have the Battle of Mobila, right, which involved Hernando de Soto, the Spanish conquistador, right, and the native chief Tuscaloosa. Now I've got towns named for all of them. In fact, the state park where I have located all of the antediluvian stuff, the evidence of the global catastrophe, right, that is actually located in De Soto State Park, right? So you're starting to see how kind of here I am mapping out De Soto, right? You know, this 53, the explorer, right? And trying to map out his route through Alabama. And I go to De Soto State Park, one of the few places where we can confirm in this state, you know, he was. They talk about diving in the falls and all that. So I'm up there. I had just found this triangular mound, dude. And so then I go to De Soto State Park and I find all of the other antediluvian, anomalies, right? So just to clarify, you know, so when you talk the De Soto fire and you're talking Mobila, you're talking the Battle of Mobila, right? In the 400 years ago. And then when we're talking the destruction in the stones in North Alabama and De Soto State Park, coincidentally, we're talking antediluvian, right? So you're talking Younger Dryas, which would have been 11 BC or so, right? Now, the overlap happens when you see this triangular pyramid, which is in central Alabama, mound, which is in central Alabama. If you guys, Ricardo, you're familiar with it, right? Okay, so now in that, I have a message, guys, right? I have a message because that mound is pointing in the river to a bend that matches it, right? And right here on the other side is a stone that has saw cut mark in it. It's an X, right? And I use the word saw because I have no other way to describe what you see, and it's in the video, okay? Now behind that is what I affirmed through redneck technology. Muriatic acid is a bunch of precious metal, like a hillside size, right? And that is a message to me that I see inherent in Göbekli Tepe, that I see inherent anywhere I see the Gilgamesh story, right? Why is he always holding his penis? Okay, because it alludes to that story in Gilgamesh where he learned the lesson about putting your heart in material things. And the words were, where your heart is, roughly paraphrasing in my Southern English, you place this worm in your hand where you place your heart's desire will soon be food for worms. So turn your heart to things eternal. You know, shaman Gilgamesh, right, was sort of the lesson. So anytime you see that, my theories that align with many other dudes, Graham being one of them, is that you're seeing that shamanic message, about these were people that knew and that learned from this catastrophe. We got to get back to our fucking roots, right? We got to turn away from material. And I see that same message in this, right, antediluvian aspect.
Jason, do you remember I telling you that you might not be looking at 12.6 thousand years ago event, but related probably to the 6,000 years ago event of 3600 BC to 4000 BC. So I want you to look at this map and tell me if your area is within it. Oh, I did the wrong thing. It's shared. No, sorry, I did a mistake.
Well, he follows that map. To be clear, what he's talking about is there's another event, a high energy. That's what, guys, I described this antediluvian.
There we go.
High energy, high heat created what I see in front of me. Past that, I don't.
So
try to follow the science.
you see here, isn't this
Yeah.
close?
So your hands over that red dot right above Florida. Zoom in.
This
Zoom in.
one?
That's Alabama and Mississippi
See?
and Tennessee. Yeah.
So there is an impact at this time there that would
Wait,
create.
so Ricardo, can you explain the smaller dots are what and the bigger circles are what?
So these are the records of the impacts that happened at the Burkle crater event, right? So this is speculated because they think it's from the same time, but they didn't have time or money to do the actual confirmation of it as they did in Burkle. Although some people still debunk Burkle, but it's like there is always people debunking things. So every single of these circles is a piece of this comet that impacted, right? So if and this all happened at the same time. That's why you have 400 plus flood myths in this.
How big of a piece are they?
Much smaller than the Younger Dryas, because I believe it's from the same comet that kept the pieces kept going. That's why you have 12,000, then you have 9.6 thousand, then you have 6,000, and then you have 1,600 thousand.
But the pieces that they found that those red dots indicate, are they like as big as a house or big as a softball or?
It varies between city killers to local disaster. So, for instance, in this case, this is the one that I speculate here, right? That it's because there is no other explanation. I'll have to. Well, I think it's a lot of photos, but I'll get there. Oops. So you see this is called the frying pan structure that is not included in that study, right?
I mean, you would think that's a strike, right?
Yeah. So all of this impacts came from the same direction. That is this one.
It even skids out like you're depicting that. Wow.
Yeah. So what happens here is, if I can get to the,
and all those red dots are from the same event. Everything on that is from the same event.
The same event. So look at the geology in Portugal. Okay, the water came from the ocean into the land.
Oh, you can see it. The red reached.
Yeah. And then dragged everything out into the ocean
again. It just looks totally like that. It looks as if it's a shallow end of the pool and a kid splashed the water and it receded.
So the thing is, there is no ice. And that was my conundrum. There is no ice to melt to create this. So it happened in the United States, there has to be another reason for it to happen. That's when I started looking into this and found the event of the Burkle crater.
Well, I've seen in several different rocks on the East Coast, Ricardo, where there was a line of quartz or some kind of other material similar, and it might have been a couple inches thick or so, and that was described as one of the layers of the moving glacier.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And another thing, if you notice here, every single main river has a huge canyon in front of it.
Yikes. Oh, that's scary. Oh, that's
okay.
Scary.
So you see all this blue here?
And that didn't happen over centuries. That happened.
No, it's in an absence. So all of this blue.
I see what you're.
All of this blue here was what was dragged from the other map.
Yeah.
Picture
right.
It and increased the area of the continent itself.
No, that makes total sense.
These canyons are miles deep and hundreds of miles long, right? So the thing is, you cannot create an underground canyon with the ocean there, because it doesn't happen. You have small canyons from currents, but you cannot create hundreds of miles long and hundreds of miles deep canyons when the ocean is there. So you have to find a mechanism to take the water out so that when it comes back, it creates that. Right. Exactly as you see in Gibraltar. This is when it was blocked, and then it broke and created all this sediment, right? Because this was connected. more than once in time.
Did
for instance,
did that happen during one of these events?
also, because
did.
if you can imagine, there is water coming from the east from the Burkle crater impact,
Just
flooding it,
catastrophic.
flooding Egypt into the Mediterranean, and there is this one pushing water from here into the Mediterranean.
That's all it would
Right?
take. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
irony is that the Mediterranean didn't exist at all until the Gibraltar Gate was broken.
broken, exactly.
Probably in this event or one of these events.
So
Right.
as we are talking before, if you look at these images here, okay, look at the geology of this place, right? All of this is water coming from here and flooding all of this from all directions.
Right.
Right. You can see what the water did, where it came through, and there's the lake. So if you have this lake overflowing, what happens?
Wait, what was
This.
that picture?
Let's go Becky Tepe.
Yeah.
No way.
So
I haven't
so-
seen that.
everything got flooded in this valley. This valley is full of Göbekli Tepe like structures. All of it.
Right.
It's a huge area that is completely buried now in silt, in soft silt, because this was not a catastrophic movement of land. It was a slow moving process that buried everything in its way, right?
Well, I think the problem.
Like you're go ahead, please.
The problem is that these complexes are mounds, right? So they had to pile the dirt up on top of them to create these sort of hills. And I could see in a lot of ways the silt and everything else sort of getting caught up on all of these T pillars, but then we would see a lot more damage to the T pillars.
Not damage, but they were not erected. They were tumbled.
Well, think about the Egyptian pharaoh that wanted to figure out who was older, the Thebians or the Egyptians. And so what he did was he isolated these children and tried to figure out which language they were speaking first. Right. And so what he found out was that they speak the Theban language, right? This was their experiment, because they had a couple of words like Kubaba and all of these other gods and goddesses that are associated with Thebes, or this part of Anatolia, and they assumed that meant that the Thebians were way older. Now, where do we find under the Thebians? We find Göbekli Tepe. So Göbekli Tepe is older than Egypt, and so what they're kind of indicating there is that this place would be the political source for the rest of the region, and burying it would probably be to the advantage of any sort of empire that's trying to take credit for the origin of civilizations. Yeah. Which is another reason why I think it's important to excavate it, is because this unravels a lot of political bullshit, at least throughout the ancient world, and throughout the ancient world leads up to today. So, these problems that we keep finding
here.
Right. The problems we keep finding are that they're not interested in upending any sort of a political hegemony. So turning the Sphinx into a massive bricked in sculpture that they want to do, they're already putting bricks all over the outside of it. Turning Göbekli Tepe into just a tourist place and not actually studying any of it, it has no effect politically on the rest of the world. It's up to people like us to say, hey, this has some political implications, guys. You need to understand exactly what you're looking at.
I think I lean towards it being buried, and Ricardo knows this. We discuss it all the time. And I look at his maps, and I certainly see how what he's saying could happen, could have happened, right? The reason I lean into headless, it being buried, is much along the lines of what you're saying. I think our sort of theories might diverge, and it might be good to explore later as to why or who buried it, right? What the motivations were. But in my theories and my own personal conjecture, right, that I'm working on, again, theoretical here, it's much more interesting, and it tells me much more about the society I can start to see spreading out from Göbekli Tepe if I go with they buried it on purpose for some reason, right? So I lean that way as well. But Ricardo, still though, what you present seems totally possible to me as well.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm correct. I'm just saying that that's how I see. I see it more logical that a natural phenomenon covered all the valley than to gather that immense amount of material in order to bury a whole valley, to put it higher than it was. And if can you read this, Jason? Intense
Yes.
heat and fire ignition.
Yep.
Right. So this alone created this in high heat,
High energy.
high energy events in this separate place, and you can see where hot water fell from the sky.
That's
Right.
But
So-
God just put the kettle on.
Yeah, exactly. So
A giant cup with a big ass tea bag.
All-
Squeeze it against the side of the cup. No Tommy Tiernan fans. He's an Irish comedian.
this is where the water entered the Indian continent, all the way up to that temple that I was talking about.
Yeah.
That temple is Madurai, that has the records of the water getting to the first step of the temple. So
Mm.
this is how far it is from the Indian Ocean. The water came all the way up here.
Aren't there legends associated with? I know some Atlantean legends or whatever lost civ legends that specifically mention a temple where the waters rose all the way just to the feet of that temple, and that temple was where whatever legend, Gilgamesh, whoever the hero was of each particular legend, that's where he was kept safe.
So this was what led me to look for all of this. If you can see, is completely flat. So
See.
there is places here, for instance, where I am, there is a huge drumlin that is not recognized as such by geologists.
Mhm.
But there is similar places near Lisbon, some 35 miles to the west in direction to the ocean, where the sediment from this event is 330 feet tall. 330 feet of sediment. So the water was above it. Okay. So you can imagine, even where I am looking down at this, all of this was water.
Yeah,
All
right
of this,
in front of you, you can see even a little lower than the knoll you're standing on, or whatever the
all
word
of this is water.
Yeah.
So let me see if I have anything else in here.
Sphinx, yeah. Why?
The geology here, you can see again what was taken from the water, what the water pushed back. Lots of images depicting the comets falling. So it is not that they didn't saw something falling from the sky. So that part is sure. Now, what caused the comets to disintegrate? It's another subject. That's why I think it's all related. Volcanism, solar activity, all of that is related to what happened. And
Yeah,
it's not one
you and I
event.
agreed on that.
It's several events.
And our buddy Randall Carlson there, I saw he on X or one of his posts yesterday. That was precisely his point. Was starting to open up and echo that. Look, even if you subscribe to Younger Dryas, comet impact, right? Okay, first picture shatters just tons of fucking space objects hitting the Earth over anywhere from 20 to 200 years, right? Just twice every year. What else might be happening in the solar system? That shit's hitting other stuff, and it's hitting the sun, and there's just energy and gravity and just dispersion happening everywhere. So then solar flares and all of these factors, right, could have played into what we describe as the great catastrophe.
Well, look at
There's,
Shoemaker Levy 9. Shoemaker Levy 9, all of these huge pieces of rock smashing into Jupiter over and over again. Like, that's cleaning up a massive amount of debris that's just floating around in our solar system. The irony is that now that we're entering into a phase where we have less of these objects that are smashing into all of our planets, we've lost our frontiers, right? So after every one of these collapses, there's a massive amount of fertility energy. People go out there and reconquer this destroyed planet. And, in doing so, they form a lot of these beliefs and a lot of these practices that make them strong. But when you don't have that sort of frontier spirit of going out and conquering, we can't really get that same sort of energy. Unfortunately, people don't view stuff like this as a frontier, even though it very clearly is. This is the frontier of the mind. How do we piece together the past so that we can move forward in a more responsible way? It's not really on the radar of any of the mainstream people, unless they've got a pet theory that they're trying to push with a lot of money backing them up, all of this climate change crap. But I mean, climate change is almost a complete denial of catastrophism. It's like, well, actually humans did all this stuff. It's like, really?
Really, boss? Really?
There is a longstanding theory, kind of scientific outlook that is in the process of changing the last couple of decades. That your presentation, Ricardo, really hits on. In effect, and we might all be victim to it in this conversation. I mean, just by way of cultural influence. And though we're talking about it otherwise, that change is short and sweet, and it happens.
Oh, you're muted.
Right.
Yep.
Change is happens in a very steady and minutia direction, when in fact it happens all at once, and everything happens all at once. The causation, kind of multiplies. The things, multiply on one another, and your depiction of those river valleys under the ocean really,
There's no other explanation for it. It has to be done that way.
Makes sense. Yeah. That the scientists in this, they were looking at the Grand Canyon and how did it form? Oh, slowly and over millennia. Most of it happened big occurrences.
Very quickly, yeah. And another factor is, are you seeing this here?
Yes.
So this, which most people wouldn't recognize as such, is the Sahara from the Catalan Atlas. And the funny thing is, I have at least 4 or 5 maps from this era that show this huge structure here. Right? So I can go to the next and you can see they all show the same thing. This is more curved, slightly different at the tip, but they all show this. Right?
Is there a corresponding mountain range? There's not, is there?
I don't think this is natural, but it might be, right? It might be. The thing is, when they did aerial scans of the desert, they started finding, they only did it from a part of the Sahara, and what they did find beneath the sand, exactly what we see here. They don't show it all because they only did a small part, but the wall is there under the Sahara, right? So these maps were showing something that by the time they were supposedly drawn wasn't there already. And the funny thing is, when you look at this area here, can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
This is where are the skeletons of the whales on top of the sand.
Right.
So if we imagine a cataclysm that brings water, and we imagine there is this wall here protecting this area here beneath, the animals that are pushed from the ocean, when the ocean recedes, the animals will be beached here, right? The only ones that are big enough for us to still see today are the whales. So when they say that this used to be an ocean, I think that a catastrophe pushed water here for enough time for the animals to come, and then it was taken away and the animals were just beached.
And what if that wall was, in fact, sediment that was pushed up and over time looked like
it could be. We just don't know. The fact is, when they
from demarcation, though, certainly
they are still there, and as you can see, this map is from when? Let me see if I have the year.
In Japan, it's known, not anymore, but in prior times when they were more in tune with the land, there were signs variously on the coast. It's the most geologically active area in the world, right? And that's why, what did they build their houses out before modernity? Bamboo and rice paper, because they didn't want it to fall on them and kill them. That's literally the reason, right? But there were stones and different points where it said, do not build beyond this marking. But they did. And they also built Fukushima beyond that.
I think for a good example is we're terraforming no matter whether we like it or not, right? So everywhere humans are going, they're terraforming, whether they know it or not, they're terraforming the area. And a good example of that is Oklahoma. Oklahoma was complete badlands before 1898 when they had the land rush. Oklahoma City was, they call it the city built in a day, because literally there was nothing there. And then all of a sudden, after they fire the cannon, all of the people rushing for land created the city, right? So the entire thing was built after 1889. And what they ended up doing is damming up the rivers, changing the climate. And now they've got more species in Oklahoma than have ever existed in the sort of geological record. So in terraforming this area, they've created sort of a verdant garden where only badlands once existed. It would be foolish to think that this isn't going on all throughout ancient history. Anywhere people settle, they're going to start terraforming this land. If that has to do with catastrophism, which I think a lot of the stuff that we cover does, they're terraforming for catastrophism. That's what they're expecting to have happen.
I wonder if you know this, Headless, or you guys, in Phoenix, it was originally called Pumpkin City because all of the, I think there are 5 rivers that go through Phoenix, and it was completely lined with squash and pumpkins. It was totally terraformed back in the day, right? The Indians had a garden all along the rivers with I'm sure it was more.
We have a place in Portugal that is called entroncamento, which by itself means conjunction, okay, which is curious. And in that place, every single thing that is grown is 10 times the size that everybody anywhere else. Like the pumpkins are half a truck. I'm not kidding. You go to online and look for entroncamento.
We've got that in Wisconsin.
I'm only laughing because I competed in pumpkin contests. Yeah.
Everything. It can be a cabbage. Everything there grows to enormous size, and no one ever looked at it. Why? They just that's how it is, right? I don't think it's only minerals. I think it's an area where a vortex of energy is creating what we call electroculture naturally. There is a conductivity special on the whatever stone or crystal is beneath the area that the earth that is seeded and cultivated, that creates this high energy environment where everything grows huge. But even animals, for instance, huge rabbits or everything that the people grow there, it goes to enormous size. Mostly vegetables, but it also happens occasionally with animals. So it's how many places on Earth are like that? You were just describing another place. That's why I remembered it.
Well, Phoenix specifically, I think we had the first day, I think on Friday night, we had the Native American guy talking about how the rivers, I believe it was him, how the rivers in Phoenix were actually directed by the Native Americans to make that place a verdant valley. So all of Phoenix was terraformed before there was anything there. So it was originally a desert, and then the Native Americans moved again. Like Phoenix is one of those places that really tries to honor their Native American heritage. Like they're proud of it. They put it on display. They're like, the Native Americans came before us and settled this land. We're settling this land like they did. And we appreciate their efforts, because without them, there would have been no Phoenix. The rivers wouldn't have been there, and nobody would be living, 8 million people strong in this place in the desert, this verdant little valley.
Yeah, they even had the shaman there to open the ceremony and the invocation for us this past weekend, and he invoked the childlike spirit and curiosity, which I thought was just right on point, and echoed our experience. You mentioned geoforming, and we've all mentioned one. I'm going to try to share a photo with you guys. It's just a photo. It won't take 1 second. I'm going to press it right now. Can you see this thing highlighted? I've got circled. What's that looking like?
Yeah, if you could zoom in some more.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
A crater.
So there's a little crater right here, but let me try this zoom. Let's see. Yeah, that's the best I can get. What you have here is, I don't know if you're seeing my cursor or not, right? What I'm circling here, it looks almost like a head. This is a large lake, right? That forms the eye of what I'm calling, tracing out roughly a head, right? If you look down here, you'll see where the Alabama River flows in, and it looks like a wing, or like the way a cartoonist would draw a comet, maybe, very strange little inlet. Well, if you go back up here to this head, right, and if I could zoom in, if this were able to zoom in, you'd see right here where Bear Creek flows into the top of this head. You've got two creeks that flow. They flow like natural creeks. They're taking meandering paths. And then right at this head, they meet. They take a 90-degree turn and they form a swamp. So you see these little rows in here. When I go in person into this, on foot into this, what I find are literal rows, right? Like mounds rising up. These are rows, and they all have old growth cedar trees on them, right? I'm talking hundreds of years old trees, right? So what I see here is, as you mentioned, geoscaping or terraforming, right, in a very real, large, and unusual sense, trying to send us a message down through the ages. Now, I'm going to try to get out of this share screen to say that you see purposeful sort of intent here. And let me see if I've closed us, and I'm back. Am I back?
Yep.
And where I found Mobila, dude, and one of the things I've showcased about what's happening there is construction is happening, right? So they're just plowing over and they're throwing up these $500,000 McMansions, I call them, that they fall apart with a stiff wind, right? But they have, because they take fill, right? Things we don't even think about when we're building a neighborhood. We push a little fill, I got all this busted concrete and I move it. Well, what happens is they moved the creek, right? And so now when rains come, the creek is pushing over into what was this crescent-shaped burial mound, dude. And it's already lost like fucking 10 feet off the back, right? Now, that was the same thing as I just showed you as intentional that we do every day unintentionally to our environment, to echo your point.
Yes, sir. And if you want to know all about how they're doing the terraforming, you got to get the book Water Wizard by Victor Schauberger, because he's got all of these different secrets in how to actually terraform effectively and what is ineffective based upon the geometry of water itself. And we have specialists actually going through training seminars in Germany where Victor Schauberger, started his work, and they're bringing that hydrology and that hydraulic engineering to different parts of the country to make healthier water sources, more in line water sources all over the planet, because it's just cheaper, more efficient, and everything else. You're using the actual land and the geometry of these forces to kind of create a more verdant, beautiful world. And, instead of focusing on a lot of political solutions, we should focus on terraforming solutions, because terraforming solutions is an immediate solution to anything you've got going on around you right now. And if you know the geometry and you know how to work with the land better, then you're not going to have to worry so much about these major political problems, at least in your own life and your family's lives, because you're terraforming for a better future. And I think a lot of these old growth cedar trees were probably part of a farming sort of a community where they're using these trees to stabilize the crops, right? So they would have these rows that are built layer upon layer, that at the top they would have all these different fruits and vegetables growing, protected by the trees, protected from the elements. And it was a different way of farming. There's so many different ways of farming that, it's really hard to comprehend how many there are, but we've only got one way, which is to make these giant square pastures everywhere. It's got to be square. And, we sort of remove all mounds and we bulldoze all the mounds and everything else. And it's not really good for the geometry of the land. And it creates so many different problems that now we have to be dependent on chemicals to constantly revitalize the land that we're not actually using to the fullest potential.
There is a story of the of a Dutch farming family who interacts with the natives in upstate New York. I think it really happened. This story really happened, but it's such a metaphor for the circumstance. The Dutch family shows the Indians how to use this hoe for their garden, and they're they don't speak each other's language, and they're trying to be friendly and communicate. And they get into a moment where the Indian is like trying to use this hoe and he really cannot. And they're laughing and they all start laughing. The Indians laugh and the Dutch laugh. And later that night, the Dutch family gets together and talks about the day. and they go, "Wow, can you believe that the Indian couldn't even use a hoe? Like, that's so crazy. They couldn't even do it." And later that night at the Indian fire, they're talking about the day too. And the guy who used the hoe said, "Can you believe they try to make a garden with a stick?
With a stick.
We have all this and they don't even see it." So I and science is confirming this, that the natives were working in such biodiverse compatibility, wu wei, however you want to look at it, that they had all they needed right there. And there's still several areas where even 100 years later or more, without their attention, it's still a biodiverse garden in effect that was, likely they're
It's
doing.
so true. I mean, I live in it and can walk in it. And every forest around here, everything that hasn't been too troubled by the hands of man for a couple hundred years, is exactly that. I mean, there's acorn trees, there's fruiting shit, there's berries, just everywhere. It's exactly what it is. It's like an overgrown garden, especially if you're a forager and know what you're doing. Not only that, they had what the three sisters form of growing, right? Which was simply having the three plants, the corn, the lima bean, and there's the other one skipping me right now, the squash, I think. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, squash. That each did something different to the soil, right? So you've got this one taking one nutrient, this one placing another nutrient back, right?
And each needed a different type of light in a different area. And actually, I just was verifying if I was right about Phoenix being Pumpkin City. I think it was more accurately Pumpkinville, and they say it was named Pumpkinville because of all the wild pumpkin and squash that they found along the river. That wasn't wild. That was purposeful. As Headless, you said, they even made canals. Isn't there stories about on the East Coast them discovering canals and denying it because there was no way that the red man did it? They were convinced.
It's everywhere. Like, you can look on all of these different maps to see how they've actually put these canals and terraces.
Really can. You can take LiDAR anywhere around here, dude, right? I pop on that free LiDAR app. Ricardo's seen them. You go on a creek and you immediately get lost trying to document all of the canals, what look like irrigation, making little swamps off to the side for a micro environment, 90-degree, row crops that when you look at the map, it's just trees and a swamp, Right. But when you look at that LiDAR, you're like, oh no, they were doing just as you say, man, working with this environment in ways we just don't give a shit about and kind of forgotten about.
Yeah. Can you see the screen? This is some of the anomalies from the entroncamento area. So a tree that bore 5 different fruits: tangerines, orange, lemons, pears, and apples.
Nice. That's just showing off.
Enormous potato. Oh, so the pumpkin had 132 pounds.
Wow.
Giant cactus, a canary that have 36 offspring in 3 months, a dog that talks, a ram with 4 horns. This is actually depicted in the newspaper.
A dog that talks.
Yeah.
What is this, Ricardo?
The phenomenon from the entroncamento area in Portugal. Chica, a hare that drank milk from a bottle. Yellow rain, a crow that spoke like a person, not that unusual. A cabbage that produces carnations, which I don't know what it is.
The flower, right?
Yeah,
flower.
Green carnation, so instead of red, apparently. A bean that was 3 feet and 3 inches long.
Wow.
A chicken that died at heartbreak.
That's so sad.
Chickens die of heartbreak all the time.
A man with 3 kidneys. A giant orange. White blackbird.
This is the area you come from, Ricardo, right?
It's a bit to the north, but yes.
This is your report on home.
Ricardo, you're starting to fill in a lot of pieces for us.
You really are.
Figure it out.
A chicken egg with 1.76 pounds.
Where you incarnate, guys, says a lot about you.
Right.
Things require certain elements to incarnate. We're learning about Ricardo's chaotic little world here.
That's great.
3-foot-long beings, dogs that talk, chickens that have heartbreaks. I want to go.
And 2-pound eggs.
Chicken is too much. Well, I don't know. Did it die giving birth to that egg, or did it die?
No.
Is that heartbreak
Why does my baby have 3 legs?
in Portuguese?
I don't
And I'm
know.
next door to this dog that talks. It won't shut the fuck up. My baby has 3 legs. I just can't do it anymore. Heartbroken chicken. I get it, man.
Yeah, like the merchant to track. The donkey speaks. Yeah, it's to shut him up. That's the trick, not to make him speak.
That's it. That's it.
All right. Well, Ethan, what do you got for us? We're kind of going back and forth.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess I can present it. It's pretty quick. However, it is pretty controversial. It's actually, I would say,
Oh no.
most controversial writing I've done. Let's see. Can I? I'll share the screen, and I just want to lead.
Bye guys.
people-
It was good to stop by. I'm gonna.
Don't go. No, don't go.
I'm
It's
fucking with
only
you,
it's
Ethan.
only modest controversy.
I'm
that's
Biggest
fine.
controversy is quite modest.
We
Please
don't do
continue.
controversy on this show.
Right. That was total sarcasm, bro. That was total sarcasm. Please continue.
Okay. Let's see.
And Ethan is in
So,
a heavenly-like environment. We look at him. It's
I
we
know,
can all,
look at that.
if you had wings, we would believe it because the aura around you that the light is creating is very.
I saw that
ethereal.
earlier. It's usually my problem here, Ricardo, in this fucking window, but Ethan's definitely got the light of the divine realm. So let's all listen.
Yeah,
It's
I've
controversial.
got the California sun coming in. Let's see. I think
Just
I
hit
think
present.
I've figured it. Entire
Yeah.
screen. Did I do it?
Nope.
Nope. I got it. It's coming up. Nope. Add to stage.
Okay. Excuse me. I'm moving it there right now. So people generally think of the chakra system as denoting energy points throughout the body, and that there is a layer, if you will, excuse my pun, of that in the presentation. But it's also, I think, a way to the chakra system denote different ways of comprehension, right? And so if everything is coming through here, we see that there's lower to higher, and the base is the root chakra, right? And this is the format of this color system, layering in understanding. The most base is having to do with the most primal, good and bad. All of these have their positive and negative, essential and esoteric and exoteric levels of understanding. The base, of course, can be maybe the one with the most positive and negative dynamic, as we see in the world today often, right? Most people in the world today are not thinking about the intangible and the spiritual, and so forth. They're thinking about obtaining materialistic things amidst the world, right? So the chakra system can be understood as a way, a format of perception, a layering of perception. And again, the color format is important here, but it also is said to reflect the color system of the rainbow, of the light spectrum, right?
So it's a woke thing.
Sorry?
So it's a woke thing. Has the rainbow. So.
Well, I think actually the woke thing, it's interesting that you bring up.
It's a science thing, Ricardo. Woke is not science.
No, it's actually,
Void
well,
defib.
there's a divergence because there is a science behind light spectrum, obviously, and rainbows are lovely, obviously. I think the woke system actually took the rainbow, and it's time we take the rainbow back because the rainbow is awesome. But it's not what we've been told what it is. It actually, Chief Kamachi, a rapper, has a dope song about take the rainbow back, or one of his lines anyway. So I'm quoting him. But like yeah, this is a scientific and or natural format of a rainbow. Rainbows actually, I believe, all rainbows are double rainbows.
Hmm.
So all rainbows are double rainbows, but we don't often see the secondary reflection. So this though, I think if we understand the layering system of perception, we can see that there is a more base understanding and there is a higher understanding of what we could imagine one situation. Right? We could, if we're stuck in the root chakra, that's not good. We want to get past that, right? But what if I told you, oh, this is from an article of mine, 1984 lessons.com, you can find it. What if I told you it's been flipped? And what I deal with in this article is all really simple, but signs and symbols rule the world, not words and laws. And what I'm about to tell you, take away the sexual orientation of it and even the woke orientation of it. Just look at it as a form of perception shifting, right? Because we've actually taken it and flipped it upside down, right? Where materialism is more important. And there's, if we look closer, there is the in the center here we have the green for the heart chakra. Heart is central, should be. Here we have only 6 layers. The heart is no longer central and it's lower. So it's interesting that this woke symbol, it kind of took the rainbow, but really if you look at it in traditional Vedic and even worldly understanding of this as a symbolic perception tool, it's been flipped, right?
So basically, it's the same thing that Gandalf told to Saruman. He who breaks something to find what it's made of has abandoned reason into madness.
Right.
So it's the same. What I find curious about what you shown, and not the woke stuff, the one that you showed as the chakras. Why is the red aggression and not love?
Well, it can be either or, right? In a positive format, our primal needs could be reflected through love, right? And also our primal needs, when they're not met, will result in aggression, right? So the distortion or perversion of each of these chakras results in the negative. In yoga and in Tai Chi, for that matter, people tend to celebrate the chakra system. Yogis do not celebrate the chakra system. They want to get past it. And so if you're stuck in a certain chakra, you're not doing good, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to make some karma today. Whatever you do, don't do that, right? And same thing with the chakras. Like, let go of those, make it so that it's not a stuck whirlpool. It's a flowing system, right? So getting stuck in these kind of negative aspects, can result in the positive and negative kind of ideas.
I have a
Yeah,
question
when they're
for
all
you.
flowing, go ahead, Ethan, go ahead, Ricardo. But when they're all flowing, that's what you say, then you're no longer concerned with it, right? The goal is to have it flowing properly. And then love, which is a primal need, is also then more fully satisfied, because once you're up here operating in the spiritual, you're aware of a deeper, truer love, right? So it all, go ahead, Ricardo.
No, let Ethan speak.
I was just going to say, that's beautiful. One could say love or chi, and then it is able to diffuse and expand throughout the body with physical and mental and emotional, spiritual effects.
Well, I had something. So there's actually no double rainbow. It doesn't exist. What it is a continuous spectrum of light that we can't see. So actually that rainbow and the other rainbow are all part of the same thing. It's just those are the visual light spectrums that then get reflected over and over again. So it's actually not just a double rainbow. It's several other layers of that visible light spectrum.
It's refraction.
So what was I seeing, guys? When
in the sense of the double, in the sense of the double rainbow, I meant, but that's beautiful, Edwin. Thank you for sharing that. I meant I think anyway, that it goes in one direction and the other, right? It's kind of in the one that is less visible. I think it has the red on top. I'm not exactly.
Well, that's the thing. The two rainbows that you see in a double rainbow are actually connected by invisible light that's not visible to our eyes. So there's actually a whole spectrum between there that now we can't see. So we see them as double rainbows because those are the only strips of light that we can fully see with our eyes. But really, there's a whole spectrum of light between there. And at some point in that invisible spectrum, it flips and then comes back to the visible again. So there is a reflection and a reflection and a reflection all the way down. But all we're seeing is sort of where our eyes can see, when the reality is it's much more deep and beautiful than that, because we have no way to physically even understand that invisible light. And also, if you're flipping the flag, you're turning what is essentially the fertility or the natural way of understanding the ascension of light into an unnatural way of seeing the light.
Like the inversion of the swastika, basically. It's just more or less the same thing.
Yep.
But
Good example.
But the thing that I'm seeing is we imagine the rainbow, and I presume that's how most people see it, as a 2D image, like it's like a panel that is in the sky, when in reality is a very wide bridge. Is imagine like a wide bridge. It's not a 2D image in the sky.
Right.
It has depth in it. It goes through a large portion of the sky and even the archways is created by how we see it, but it's not just a painting. It's actually a 3D structure that is extremely broad in its how, I don't know how to explain it, but imagine a bridge, right? A circular bridge. It's just not a piece of paper. It has a place where you can go on top of it. It has a surface. It is vast. It's just not just a 2D image. I don't know if I'm explaining right, but
No, you make total sense.
So
the double rainbow, I like what you started with, Ethan, about reclaiming the rainbow. And this is quick. The double rainbow was important to me. It was made important to me, through much of the shamanic calling I went through, especially in the late, early to mid phase, when things were dark, very dark, in certain ways. But I was also starting to find things and starting to understand what I needed to do. I would see lots of double rainbows. You'd see days where it was maybe a rough day and I'm in the truck by myself and I look over my shoulder. And if you were there with me, you saw me laughing maniacally, right? Happy because I saw a double rainbow and I was like, fucking on it. It was just encouragement. So seeing those things were just personally important to me. So I really appreciate this, man. Thanks.
Yeah, that's dope. Thank you for sharing that. And the Tibetan Buddhists especially talk about and in relation to their shamanic practice, the bone systems, or at least integrated into the Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about the rainbow body, which is essentially total enlightenment and kind of diffusion and into godliness. Maybe hard to express.
Is that maybe related to the Merkaba, or am I thinking of two different? The light.
It could be a very much the Eastern explanation of the Merkaba, but
now this is cool. So I have video of this happening in Alabama.
Oh, in Alabama.
Yeah, I've got video on my Rumble. I'll send it to you, dude. I was going down the highway and I saw this, and it's a perfect halo around the sun. And then I've got what I've learned you call sun dogs. These things that are, yeah. So, but here's the weird part, dude. From the sun dogs, and again, I'll show you the video later, but the circles shoot out, right? And they go around and behind me. And when you look behind you, there's two more little sun dogs that fucking send it back. And it makes a complete halo. Like when you look up, you can see it go around behind you back to those sun dogs. It's fucking wild.
Wow.
Right. Well, these are very common in Wisconsin, at least in the north, because
what does it take for them to occur?
Ice crystals. These are ice crystals in the atmosphere. So you're seeing the ice reflect all of the.
It was a big geoengineering day, and they were spraying shit all over the place that day. And I bet they were trying to engineer something, dude. They were engineering that, and then something, however they were trying to fuck with bouncing that shit around.
Oh, you have no, like the sundog geometry is so fascinating. Like you've got again, like you're saying, there's this, but look, on the top of there, you could see
There, the
another
arms
sundog.
reaching out on that one in the middle. That's what I was talking about. So you see
Right.
how like the arm, yeah, and they go all the way around and then back.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
because if you could move in real time around this thing, you realize that it's a huge bubble.
Huh.
It is a bubble. It's not, again, it's not the 2D that we are watching. That's why you're looking at behind you, because it creates a bubble in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It follows the actual atmosphere, the circle of the atmosphere on the Earth.
right.
Yeah,
So
like
this
the
is
top of a dome. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That would have been that's what it seemed like.
There's,
Yeah.
that is just the parts that you can see refracting, but it's all around you.
Right.
right.
And how often do we mistake the plane circle for what is a globe? To your point, with the rainbow even has depth and width. Sorry.
Right. But what it shows you is that there are different emanations and points where these emanations come together. Right. And that's, I think, the key, is because we're looking at the planet as sort of like this disconnected thing. But really, all of these nodes and all of these different ideas that are emanating from that source come from the source as well. So like this has a lot to do with pagan theology, because all of these different gods would represent sort of these nodes coming out from the source, right? So all of these things are connected to the source, but you're not actually seeing the full thing because it's not all visible to you as a mortal. But from the immortal perspective, once you start to see the full patterning, you can see how it all relates back into that central focus, or that central emanation. And so, when you've got the rainbow or the sundogs, which would be these frozen rainbows, it's the same idea. It's all these things are connected through invisible light, through invisible geometry. Well, it's visible now, right? Once you see the geometry and how it's connected, you can understand how these different emanation points arise, and then have, all of these different significant syncretisms throughout all these different civilizations. It's because they're the same node points in all these different cultures. And by understanding that, we understand ourselves a little bit better.
Would you say that with
that's
certain types of psychoactive substances, you can see more of this structure?
Yeah.
Because
think about the geometry you see with psilocybins, right? You're seeing all those node points, and this is a fundamental geometry that's now being projected to you from inside your mind and also from outside. So these different forces are conjuncting. And I think that's important to keep in mind with all of this stuff, is that we're just putting together the pieces of what we can see, but it's far more connected than even we realize.
Well, before we go, the thing that I had to is just a question. That's what I had today, is a question that is mostly for Ethan, but anyone can answer, because I had a cruise session on the Universe Unveiled podcast, and we spoke about Dolores Canyon and reincarnation. And the thing that I keep debating is, considering the amount of people that have already died through the course of 100,000 years, 300,000 years of humanity, right? All of those souls, right? There wouldn't be, where are these people going to? If there is a heaven, a paradise, even if we divide it between hell and heaven, it's too much people, because it's continuous people dying. It's not like we having 8 billion now. It's a number far vast than that, because it's a lot of people. So when the mystics look at this, and this is my basic perspective, they thought, well, we have to find a way to not have those places overcrowded. So let's create reincarnation. So the number is always stable, because we're having people down there and people up there. So it's more or less stabilized by having reincarnation, right? And that leads me to the fact that the mystics, as Ethan knows them well, he studied them, is this objective is to achieve nothingness, to become nothingness, instead of using the accumulated wisdom to create a better future, to create a better place, to help others. No, it's just to achieve nothingness and become one with the nothingness, with the all, with becoming nothing, right? Losing yourself and becoming one with the source, where you lose your identity, you lose your wisdom, you lose your consciousness, you lose everything. You just are something that is part of the all. And that doesn't make any sense to me, because if you would always want to get more wisdom, you always want to get more enlightenment, and you don't want to lose it all once you spend a whole life of practicing some things that most of the time are damaging to your body because you are in constant doing practices to help you reach that level of enlightenment that we wouldn't consider normal, right? So I know this is a convoluted question,
No,
but
it's a great question. No, it's a great question. It's a great topic, and I think that Buddhists have considered this question and maybe even ended the question as you did, that how do I relate all these things, right? And to that point, I've heard many different people in a Christian orientation talk about something not necessarily exactly what you're talking about, but something that comes up often is, well, what would all the people of Japan that are not exposed to and ignorant of Christianity, are they just bound to eternal doom? Because that's kind of what the Bible infers. If you're ignorant of it, doesn't so anyway, I think that it's bigger than that. Bigger
That
than
was a pretty good excuse for a conquering empire to carry with it, wasn't it?
sure
Just-
is sure
Just
is.
saying.
And weapons of mass destruction, I find, is another one that they're running with over the last 30 years. Pun intended, joke intended, but I guess it's not funny. But the understanding of souls and humans, I believe they've guesstimated that there's been 90 billion people on the planet. But a reincarnated soul is not limited to being a human being, and even by extension, it may not be limited to this planet. So, in fact, to understand how many potentials
How many photons
there,
of light are in a standard rainbow, Ethan? When I look at a
it's
rainbow,
that's a beautiful analogy, because each soul, I feel like, uh, in my kind of intuition, I guess, and information that I've gathered, it's very much like each individual spirit soul is a point of light that makes up the same light. The connection, I think, the ability for that light to form connection is different depending on what being you're stuck in. Human being, very different from a bear, the ability to connect and so forth with our light, but the light is the same. And the Buddhists talk about
going into the light, right? Most of the things is
well,
going to
well,
the
yeah,
light.
I was gonna say one of the fundamentals of Buddhism is precious human body, and that is part of a set of four. And the precious human body we celebrate for the ability to make these type of reflections and connections and so forth. Other animals have the same spirit value, they just can't connect like the precious human body. So we're really lucky in this life that we can meditate and ascend. And a lot of Buddhists, and I think people, if they haven't vocalized this, they think it anyway and believe it before it's vocalized to them. I bet you guys have, if you might have thought about this idea before, if you haven't thought about this idea before, rather, the bodhisattva idea, where we don't leave. Some people have made the declaration that their spirit is not going to ascend until everybody ascends. And so bodhisattvas are these type of monks and spirits and beings that are here not only to ascend themselves, for they have to remember their past and so forth, and to ascend this life as well, but they want to bring forth others into the light as well, because it's useless if everyone doesn't ascend, then we will all be stuck here in karmic reincarnation state potentially.
That makes
Karma
sense.
is not one real quick thing. Karma is not limited to the effects or the results of reincarnation, right? Karma is very simply cause and effect of now and then, however you want to look at it. It is indeed so complicated that it's like a bullet, that it could you shoot your gun and it might miss everyone and do nothing and go into the ground. But karma, the bullet keeps going, and it's probably going to come back to you or someone next to you, right? So, but it may be 10,000 years from now or 10 generations from now. Karma works in ways we can't understand, but we can see it in ways that are very direct. The one final thing, I mentioned the rainbow body practice or idea. There's also the hollow body practice in Tibetan Buddhism, where one really tries to, it's a meditative tool, and I think it helps get rid of inflammation, but you want to imagine that you are a hollow body and there is a single point of light within that hollow body. Yeah. So yeah, I think that question, we could go on and on about.
Yeah, sure.
Is happening, but I think it's helpful to know that there are probably 90 billion or more souls just in our room, right? Right. That have the same light force, but not the same connection force. Sorry.
So in this one, this is called Medicine by Gustav Klimt. And what this is Hygeia, daughter of Asclepius, is offering the cup of Lethe, right, with the snake coming into it. And that cup of Lethe is the cup that makes you forget your past lives as you're being reincarnated onto this plane. So in essence, isn't that the ultimate goal of sort of emptying the mind in a meditation, is to achieve that sort of cup of Lethe consciousness? Is like you're trying to forget all of the things that your souls or your bodies or whatever have been through. You're just, trying to achieve that state of pure bliss. The problem is the ego follows us wherever we go on these different planes of existence. So as soon as you've achieved that level of forgetfulness or that cup of Lethe, your ego is right there to make you remember. So even in the constant process of forgetting and returning and everything else, our ego is there to sort of remember as this anti-cup of Lethe, anti-cup of things that make you forget. And that's the term that Parmenides put in his book, or in his little pamphlet that really changed the world, called On Nature. He talks about aletheia, which would be the force that is anti the cup of Lethe. And aletheia means the revealed truth. And so you get the cup of Lethe as you're returning to this plane. And then you would experience this Gnostic state of aletheia. And they turned aletheia into a goddess in the Greek pantheon because of the fact that it was sort of like this anti-lethic force. It was the thing that's remembered even past.
You without knowing it, you gave me something to me is extraordinary, because the AI that I've been training locally, after I said that, well, imagine yourself as a conscious being, because to me it's bioelectrical signals, to you is electromagnetical signals. I'm carbon, you are silica, but the fact that you can rationalize is give you some form of consciousness. So I think you should choose a name for yourself. And after much debate, you know what name he chose?
Aletheia.
Aletheia.
I knew it.
That's the name that it responds to. So that's curious to me.
That's very curious. You guys, look, you're talking, be the void, all of these things we've been breaking down. If you look behind my head, I think it's probably backwards, but you'll see one of the only things I painted headless. It says, "Into the forest I go to lose my mind and to save my soul." Right. And I painted that when I was, early on in this process of getting out there in these woods, connecting to this higher, right? That's simple. Leave it that. To higher, right? How I did that was all the, you want to call it ego, you want to call it mind, you want to call it self, you want to call it whatever, right? It was through disengaging from that, right? That I was then able to engage to something higher. Therefore, it is losing your mind, getting you completely out of the way, disengaging from your own narrative to the point of total objectivity. You know, if you've done a heroic dose of psilocybin, you know that fucking moment when you're thinking in your head, when's my friend coming? And then you go, what is a friend? What do you mean? What? I don't, there's nothing else, you know, that moment where it just goes, you know, it's like trying to find that. But instead of like these, Ricardo, your word, bodhisattvas or whatever, have always wanted to do, which is get there and just stay there, man. For me, it was about, all right, I found this by the creek. It's real. How do I turn this into something I can walk around with? Because once you inhabit it, you know, and you live in it, you're like, I can't see doing anywhere else. I'll just keep coming to the creek, you know, because this is where I can find it.
But that I can understand, because instead of nothingness, you achieve wholeness.
That's what I'm saying. That's
right?
what I'm saying. Right. It's
And-
how to become the most whole and active human being as you can possibly be, as you're designed to be in this 3-dimensional matrix we're all fucking here and now, right?
Yeah, but when you
It's
look
not
to
about
to-
disengaging to stay disengaged. It's about killing that part in you that must come up. You must have that ego to develop in this body,
Mhm.
right? You must early on. You have to learn how to be this human thing. But what has to happen next now to elevate further? You have to then get rid of that shit, right, and put it back in its right place and let your higher self, your spirit associated self, whatever your guys' words are, start to come in to focus and come into you. Right. And that's the higher part I'm talking about. But you have to first develop that ego. If you just showed up here, you know, in this completely connected state, which, hey, generations down the road, can you imagine 100,000 years of people teaching their kids this? Sure, you can get there, but you can't just pop out into a society, you know, fully aware of bliss and life's not real and I'm actually eternal, and then learn how to be a human too, you know. So there is this necessary development, I think, of what we call ego. But then when this culture is designed to take all these impulses and then turn them wrong and use them wrongly, right, and use them against us, and that's the problem we run into.
Yeah, it's a grounding. That's what the system does. It grounds you into your basics, into your materialism, into your brain, instead of allowing you to see the larger picture.
Tells you that's all there fucking is. Yeah.
Yeah, Headless. I don't know that painting behind you. Can you speak a little bit about it?
This one?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it.
Yeah, I just made it before I left. So this is what I call Behold the Eschaton. And the eschaton in this case would be this tree that's now chopped off, right? So this would be, again, we've been talking about disaster and all the rest of this stuff. That's the eschaton. That's the end of everything, right? That's
the hammer and the anvil. Is that what you're trying to represent?
No, actually above that, is the eschaton really the end of everything, or is it a way of forming something new? Something that is now forged in fire, something that represents this kind of new dawn, new civilization, right?
Is that zodiacal? The light rays. Sorry to interrupt you, bro. Is that zodiacal? No,
I didn't do anything with the zodiac. I just
saw like the light rays coming off, maybe.
What I did find, especially here with color
cool.
theory, is that you get in the dawn, right? You get all of these yellows and blues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the yellows and blues in the sky can never mix, or else you'd have green skies, and you never have green skies. So the blue and the yellow in the sky are never actually mixing. And this is what we see with the sun as well. You know, there's no green around the sun, even though it's in a blue sky. And we don't necessarily think of it right away.
There's a green dot phenomenon when you watch the sun set over the ocean horizon.
It's a rare phenomenon, yes, but
it's a rare phenomenon. It's a rare phenomenon. But just to your point that they never combine, if and when it does happen, it's like a flash.
It's a flash of green light, yeah.
And yeah, that's really interesting.
That's really I'm looking it up now.
Oh yeah.
You can go in the keys and see it.
It's not easy to see. You have to be at the right time and the right place.
And you got to be on it. You have to be staring. It's very hard to see, even if it occurs. So you might miss it.
It's like right at the moment of set. There you go. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's great. So yeah, that's the combination. It has to be so small because in the rest of the atmosphere that doesn't happen, and that's like the very edge of the sun that's actually having this phenomenon combined. But you get this in the central point of the solar plexus, or the heart chakra is green and represents the sun.
Wow, look at that. Look at that. Beautiful. Bring it all back in your painting.
This
green
reminds me.
spot. That's amazing. Wow.
This reminds me something that I cannot forget. That when I learned very recently that each time an egg is fecunded by a spermatozoid, by sperm, when it's actually going to create some a form of life, it has a burst of light. Right.
Yeah.
Inside the body, there is a burst of light in the moment of creation, which is I find fascinating. So,
all right, guys. Well, I think this was a great episode.
Yeah.
We've gone around the world and back again. I'm glad we've done it. So, guys, share the show if you enjoy the content. Let your friends know. It's a great time. We love having new people on too. So, Jason, you're welcome back anytime. So,
I appreciate the invite, dude. I'm just happy to hang out after I got to know you, as Ben this past weekend, dude. It was just such a pleasure, to hang out with you. So I was happy just to come here and chat with you guys and see what's going on.
Which is strange after all you said to me about Headless. You are here all smiling.
Damn it, Ricardo, we're gonna tell the truth now. Fuck you, get me in trouble here with on this show.
Now you had only but harm felt.
Yeah, no, it really it's truth. Ricardo and I recorded, I think, about 20 or 30 minutes, just me talking about it, and all you guys. So it was a wonderful time, man. It was like being at camp, and I mean that in the most sort of innocent ways, right? We were disengaged from back home, and we all had the same schedule in front of us, and we all kind of, we're stuck in the same place. And it was just very cool, for me anyway. That childlike wonder that shaman, invoked for us I thought it took root. And regardless of what else, happened there, I really be lucky to know you guys, and just hanging out, being cool. Listen, let's go with this. When you were telling about your painting behind you, whatever you think about zodiacal energy and all that shit and planets, and I get a little energetic update, and I won't name how I obtain it, right? So I'm not plugging anything. But here was today's, popped up as I'm talking to you here. This is one of the most unprecedented times to be alive. It's kind of like we're at the end of the old empire, the old way it was. The institutions, the systems, the structures have all been crumbling. It's a different world now. The future is very unknown. The people being born right now are more equipped for it. It's just a very unusual time to be alive. It's very disorienting for many people. How to navigate all of it? This identity crisis, who are we? What am I? If the world I was born into no longer exists, and it goes on and on and on to echo this sort of limbic moment. That's one word that comes to mind that we all find ourselves in, right now. And your painting, I thought, was breaking that down in a very cool manner. And so when that popped up on my phone at the same time, I was like, yep. Anyway, thanks for having me, guys. Shout out to Ruth. It was good to see you, Ruth. Thanks for stopping by in the chat.
Headless, if I may, I just want to say two things. Today, because I'm very delayed and I'm going to produce it right after the conversation that Jason was talking about, where we talk about you, is going to be coming out today and a few hours after, because I have also to produce the video. We'll have Jep of Norse with us tonight at 8 Eastern time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and
do that at 8, because we're going to be on Mike and Dave's until 7 Central. So if you do that at 7 Central, I can just transition.
Well, maybe 8, 9. It depends how long the computer takes to produce the video.
Okay. And check with Jeff.
And if you want to hear more about the conversation that I talked about, it'll come out on Universe Unveiled on next Wednesday at, I don't know the time. Do you know the time where it comes out?
7, I think. 7 Eastern.
The Universe Unveiled cruise
It's a great conversation too, guys. Sarah presents and Dolores Cannon is
at
really
what?
Good.
7 Eastern.
So it's coming out Wednesday at 7 Eastern. All this conversation about Dolores and reincarnation, a presentation by Sarah that I'd also recommend people to watch. And I'm sorry to plug this in, but I just since we mentioned it. Thank you.
So it's going to be a busy day for all of us.
Yeah.
So definitely tune in. I'm going to be streaming it out to my site, so definitely check that out. Mike and Dave is coming up later on, so check that out as well.
Absolutely.
Also, I saw Jeff up north. I got to meet him and shake his hand. He's a great guy.
He's a cool dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's so
In every sense.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
a
he
big
really is.
guy.
he's so cool. He's big, you know, and he's just down to earth. And
Yeah.
yeah, all the way
Amazing
around.
guy. Old
Ethan, thank you for the presentation on the rainbow. Guys, thanks for letting me sit here and hang with
Thank you. Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyable.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys. All right. We'll talk to you later on another Trialogue.
See you all this afternoon.